Dear partners, dear investors into the technology of string transportation, and all the guests of our today's meeting, it is a great pleasure and honor for me to welcome you here today. It is the 5th of February, quite a memorable date because on this day, at this time, our meeting is going to be joined by the author of the string transportation technology, Dr. Unitsky. Before we start our today's meeting, I would like to outline the regulation and rules and the format and check some technical issues. Give me a 10 out of 10 if you can see and hear me well, or give me a score from 1 to 10. Good, good. I see that you guys are giving me just 10s only. Trying to read the chat. We have 1,900 people today in one room. Direct live meeting from hundreds of countries across the world, which is so great, and I would like to thank you for being so active today. As for the regulation and rules for today's meeting, this is how it's going to go. Right now, Dr. Unitsky and I are going to reveal some very important points about the program of the funding optimization for GTI for the purpose of its further scaling. We are fully aware that this program was introduced literally in the last 2 weeks, starting from the video address by Dr. Unitsky, followed by a number of other videos, interviews, addresses, clarifications about this program, about this initiative. Therefore, for us, dear colleagues, it is a very important milestone in the development and scaling of UST technology, and this is what we're going to talk about today. When we start the meeting with Dr. Unitsky, we're going to switch off the chat so your messages do not distract you, do not distract us. However, we will regularly put it back on for your feedback. When Dr. Unitsky and I are over with our main message, with the key message that we are putting into our today's meeting, I will be addressing your most frequently asked questions, questions raised by our investors, and I think it will take us 1 hour, 1.5 hours for that. Dear colleagues, is everyone okay with this format of our today's meeting? And if you're okay with this kind of regulation, give me a plus in the chat for us to be on the same side. Okay, I see pluses. Then I'm ready to invite our main guest, the person for whom hundreds of thousands of people got together and have been getting together for the last 10 years, a person who is creating a sector-forming project aimed to save the planet Earth from over-congestion, pollution, to preserve our common home. Dr. Unitsky, we're waiting for you to patch in. Looking forward to it. Hello, everyone. I hope you can see and hear me. Yes, we can, Dr. Unitsky, loud and clear. Okay, then. Yes, Dr. Unitsky, we can see you. So, Dr. Unitsky, we see that right now you are at your workstation, your workplace, in your office, despite the fact that your workday is over, working hours are over, according to your schedule, but you still found time to talk to your investors, and they are quite looking forward to your speech. Dr. Unitsky, your microphone is off right now. So, dear colleagues, let's wait for Dr. Unitsky to turn his mic on, and meanwhile, you can write your welcoming words, greetings, and salutations in the chat. We are approaching the threshold of 2,000 people online. This is great. I think we're ready to go. The microphone and the videos are both on. Great, Dr. Unitsky. In this case, we can officially start our meeting. And the first thing that I wanted to say, to probably even ask you, as the author of the technology of string transportation, as the chief flagship person of this huge project, sector-shaping project, how do you assess the interim results of the initiative that has been launched in the last couple of weeks? I'm talking about funding optimization for the benefit of GTI in order to scale up the technology of UST. What is your assessment? What is your take on the process that had been launched not so far ago? Well, I have the highest praise and assessment of the results and the reaction from our investors. I see some interference. I hear some interference at my end. Is everything okay? Well, we are, after all, moving to the next stage of development, and we launched a call to action. It's a milestone where we need to scale up with a huge number of projects that we have to implement, and eventually we will be able to start paying a remuneration to our investors, because, after all, the ultimate goal for us is to implement our projects across the world and thank and express our gratitude to all of our investors who started helping this project back in 2014. And when I made my address, I said that probably not everyone will understand me, but it would be already a huge achievement if at least 10% of people would understand what I was saying, because it's not just about technology, it's about the business that our investors invested, and they need to understand, we needed to understand, that we are a very crucial point in the development of our sector-shaping technology. And if our investors get the message, understand me, and are willing to extend the helping hand and help us cover the operational costs of our group of companies, then it would be possible for us to implement our original project goals, because that money, operational costs, are necessary to cover the salaries, business trips, conduct negotiations, maintenance of the machinery and equipment for the project. For the second project that we're about to implement in Belarus, we are supposed to deliver cars, and each car costs several $1 million to produce. So how we can deliver those cars without having the funds to manufacture them? Because the customer, let's say, of a personal car, a Mercedes, does not pay to the plant money for the components to assemble the car, right? You are paying for a ready product. And it is similar here. The customer is paying for the ready product and not for the product to be assembled and pay for the components. That's why we needed that operational money to cover the costs. And dozens of thousands of people heard our call, and we addressed the problem and helped us get over this very pivotal, crucial, difficult point in our history. And now we need to be able to create a safety net to be sure that we can overcome any crisis that might happen in the world, geopolitical crisis and other type of force majeure situations. Because we need to understand that our HQ, for example, our production plant, is located in a country that is under sanctions right now. and it might be a huge problem for the supply of components and machinery. So we need to have that safety net, that safety pillow for us to be able to tap into that reserve funds to address the problem if that problem arises. And I'm talking about the safety net for the entire group of companies, GTI, not just one company, so that the entire set of companies under GTI would be able to function properly and be able to enter the market. Because as more and more projects are being started, implemented, well, more and more money start coming into the company in the form of revenues, advance payments. And when the company has the safety net, and when the company starts receiving revenues from customers as payment and down payments for their projects, and if we use the safety net to cover our operational costs, then the entire bulk of revenues can be used to generate profits, net profits. And net profits means money for paying out the remuneration to our investors. So we need to understand that the safety net is needed to cover the operational cost. And the sooner we gather the entire necessary amount, the sooner and the bigger the payouts will be. So there is a direct correlation. Okay, Dr. Unitsky, it is precisely here that I wanted to focus our attention on one very important point. I'm talking about the implementation of the GTI strategy at the time of scaling up. And I completely agree with you that we received a huge variety of feedbacks, ranging from both support. Last week, we had a huge meeting with our audience that was attended by more than 1,000 investors into UST, and many of the investors heard the call and provided that support, but quite a lot of people gave some criticism and had their questions, but we fully realized that this feedback was possible and it's normal. And we also realized that we're not going to ignore those doubts and questions. Instead, we're going to try to explain the logic behind the decisions that are being made and have been made. So over that time, we received a huge signal. The program that was proposed for optimizing the funding during the scaling of the UST technology led to a significant increase of the funds raised. I'm talking about the investment volume. And for us, the investors' colleagues, is not like a reason to be jubilant and to be full of triumph. We just need to understand that the market right now, we see that the market understands the difference between understands the transition period and what it takes to overcome that transition period. I also wanted to underline that the money that we are accumulating right now is not like a rainy day fund, that the money will not be used. No, we're talking about the working capital of the entire GTI group of companies. And that capital will be aimed at development, at speeding up design engineering works, at developing solutions that will help us move faster towards the ultimate goals. I'm talking about business growth, preparation for IPO, and shaping sustainable sources of income. And today, together with Dr. Unitsky, we're going to touch upon a list of questions related to the restructuring of the entire GTI group of companies, preparation of the corporate architecture for the next stage of development, and new approaches to investment participation, which will allow implement commercial projects without the support of governmental subsidies. Yet, we will be ready to offer transparent, economically viable solutions to governments and states. And here, Dr. Unitsky, I would like to remind you that you mentioned on numerous occasions that the speed of implementation of infrastructural projects is defined by the financial models, among other factors. So can you, as the chief designer, tell us what kind of systematic approaches help you speed up the implementation of projects without losing manageability and the quality, and how this policy is included in the GTI strategy? Well, Maxim, when implementing any infrastructural project, and our project is no exception, the key factor in the development pace is not just the technology itself, but the process implementation model. And implementation model is a very important factor. If you have a technology in place, you might position it incorrectly, and it will never reach the market, because you did not set up or organize the market penetration process correctly. And there are a lot of examples in the history, and the project will never be implemented because the market penetration was not organized properly, where the company needed money for operational costs. I'm talking about working capital. Without working capital, there is not a single company that can operate. And it is important to underline here that we're not talking about the speed of entering the market at any cost, like as soon as possible, no matter what. We're talking about removing systematic barriers, quite a lot of barriers that traditionally slow down such complex infrastructural projects. And the classical model that is usually adopted in passenger infrastructure, a lot of time is given not to design of a project or construction, but to agreeing on the funding schemes, on including such projects into the state programs, going through budget cycles and many other things. And those processes, they are objectively taking years sometimes, and even dozens of years, and even hundreds of years, regardless of the viability of the technology. Take, for example, in Europe and in France, they decided to build a tunnel under the English Channel, La Manche Channel, between France and England. That idea first popped up in the 18th century, where they didn't have steam locomotives, trains back then, and they wanted to use carriages, horse carriages. I'm talking about cargo and passenger transportation. And then the steam train came up. They continued that work, and now they switched to steam engines. Then the electric trains came up, or diesel trains came up. But then 200 years later only, after the appearance of the idea, the tunnel was finally built. This is an example of very long-term, very expensive infrastructural project. Take, for example, Messina project in Italy. It's a bridge crossing a channel, and Maxim is in Italy, he knows. It's been in discussion since 1960s, yet the solution was developed in early 20th century, but because of the changes in government and insufficient funding, it took more than 50 years for the project to be implemented. And there is another example. By the way, I'm talking about examples that are less difficult, less complex than our. Chukai-Macau-Hong Kong Bridge, which is not a sector-shaping project. Our overpass, string overpass, is kind of a bridge. We also have rolling stock going over it. We have automatic control system. We have stations. We have way more complex projects. But despite of the strategic value of that project, the entire journey from concept to construction took 30 years for them. And the main problem was not engineering problems or technologies about how the project bridge should like, but about the agreement on the funding and coordination between state agencies, because the customer was a state in this case, like in our case, because in the second project of ours, it was not a private entity that placed an order, like a guy who goes to an iStore and buys an iPhone, or you go and buy yourself a car at a car dealership. No. A private individual cannot buy such a project. We're talking about states, regions, or individual cities, or big companies that needs a track to transport ore, for example. So we realize that we need to speed up our projects by applying administrative pressure, by going from one office to another office, by sending addresses and requests to ministers, presidents, and we realized it didn't work. It didn't simply work, that administrative pressure. Then we switched our tactics, and we realized that the only models for implementing such projects that would work would be offering at once a viable solution that does not require changing the budgeting priorities of the state, because budgets of states, they usually develops for dozens of years ahead. It's a very complex procedure, and our transportation is not included in the state budgets at this moment. But in some countries, we are already included in the budget of those states, and that's why projects in those countries are very close to implementation. That is why the GTI strategy is focused on the PPPs, public-private partnerships, and on creating specialized structures, agencies for investment purposes. And the task is not to replace the state or overpass the state, but just reduce some financial restrictions that would allow our projects to move from concept to implementation faster and in a more manageable way. So out of what I said, you can already see how difficult this process is, where we have entire states in the game and not just private individuals. And another historical example here is, for example, early 19th, 20th century. Part of the transportation infrastructure in the United States was created by private companies that raised funds through shares. And it was not a question of a race for profits, but about building infrastructure when state budgeting mechanisms, financial mechanism, didn't allow it to do it quickly, because state is a very inert mechanism. And our task is not to reproduce those funding models, do like exact replicas, but the general idea. We need to make sure that our projects are ready to use and are very clear for private capital. This is not about going buying an iPhone or a car. We're talking about projects that cost tens and hundreds of millions of dollars, sometimes billions of dollars. And at such levels, it is the state who is the buyer, the customer, not a private individual. And in this case, the state is not a source of funding, but a partner and a beneficiary through developing territories of a region or area or a state or entire country. We're talking about the whole national economy, and also to making sure that transportation is available to the local population. The criteria here are way more complex compared to regular purchases made by a regular private individual. And this is the logic that we're using in the GTI strategy. This is quite a complex logic, and we are consecutively building the architecture. Yes, I guess architecture is the correct term here. Framework under which projects can be launched without lengthy pauses because we already did a lot of preparation work. Sometimes it took us years for that preparation work, linked to the budget cycles of states, because many states now that we are coming with projects because we started working with those states 10, 15, 20 years ago. They're ready for us, where crowd investing didn't exist. I started that work back then. This is why we are preserving the manageability and transparency of those projects. And in accordance with the long-term interests of all the countries' participant stakeholders. And there might be several stakeholders, not just one, dozens of them. Stakeholders that, for example, own land, which we're going to use to build our track. And what if it's like land is owned by, that whole stretch of track is owned by 10, 20 landowners, and we need to make arrangements with them. We either buy that land off them, or we use the lease mechanism, or they can probably they can participate in the project in kind with the land. So this is very complex procedure. I hope I did not use too complex language, Maxim. Dr. Unitsky, I'm sure that everything you've just said is more than clear to our investors, because currently what you did is you described the strategical logic for acceleration of the project implementation. That includes framework architecture, investment solutions, and new formats of participation. All of it is outlined in the document of GTI Group of companies for the next, until 2025, 2035. I'm talking about the next 10 years. At the same time, we see that transition to that stage of scaling up is always accompanied by increased requirements to sustainability of operational procurement. And it is then when the company launched the program for optimizing funding, which caused active reaction from investors, positive reaction, and I would like to extend our thanks to them for that. Dr. Unitsky, from the standpoint of chief engineer and author who is responsible for the team and the technology, in your opinion, why do you think in such transitional, responsible times or periods, why do you think it is critically important to first ensure the sustainability and continuity of work, and then scale and speed? This is question A. And question B, what actions, in your opinion, what might happen if that balance is disrupted? What kind of risks? Well, the risks are quite huge, and many people don't understand that, especially people who never did anything similar. Well, first of all, going to the market takes several years. First, you create the technology, you find the technology, you create it, and then you have to scale the technology and present it to the market. And that stage, I guess out of 100 companies, one company goes successfully through that stage. 99% of companies disappear, they drop out. And the history knows a lot of examples. I'm not gonna name those companies. It doesn't really matter. So we are in that 1% of companies that overcomes those risks. And those risks, one other thing that I wanted to point out is that what we're doing was did by just a handful of companies in the entire history, because usually company is what? A store, a restaurant. You do something simple. You start producing creams or toothpaste, paste or telephones or some kind of other small constructions, which is a small technology, simple technology. But when you are dealing with a sector-shaping technology, I guess there are like 5 companies in total that created sector-shaping technologies. One of them is maglev trains, for example. This is the same level of scale as our project. This is sector-shaping technology. And Siemens decided to create and implement that technology, go to the market and scale it. And they started that work back in 1930s. Then war started, they had to suspend it, and then they resumed the work. And they worked and worked on the creation of the technology for 50 years. And they invested 6.5 billion euros in it. Then scaling up started, and they received an order from Shanghai for Shanghai airport track 60 years after the start of the work and after investing $6.5 billion euros. This was the only project implemented by them that, of course, didn't pay off. Why? Because the technology turned out to be bad. The engineers made huge mistakes in design and construction, and they created a technology that led to a huge accident with 23 casualties among tourists because it was a faulty maglev technology, small clearances between the car and the track at 500 kilometers per hour. So even a small rock in that clearance between the car and the track, 2 or 3 centimeters, would cause an accident. A branch falls off the tree, a bird settles on the track, on the rails. You get an accident. And this was devised by engineers. And then there was a snow clearing machine, car, that was supposed to clear the track every single day, to clear the snow, dust, and everything from the track. And it's incorrect. We know how snow falls in winter, and it causes collapses in Sintis. Snow, you cannot deal with snow simply by clearing it. Rocks and snow will always fall. And a technology should ignore such things. Yet they created a technology that had to clear the snow, that had to have zero snow. And they set in motion on the same track the snow clearing machine and then the maglev train. And they met each other at 500 kilometers per hour. And of course, everyone died. And after that, Siemens had to fold the project as unviable. And all of it was written off as lost expenses. Like millions of man-hours and 6.5 billion euros. So it's not only the technology, but also the correct design and scaling. And we don't have those mistakes. I first created the scientific engineering design school for string transportation, the one-of-a-kind school in the world. And this is what our investors invested. Without that school, you cannot scale up the technology. And you need at least $100 million to set up such a school. So in reply to your question, as a chief engineer, as a person who have been responsible not only for the result, but also for the sustainability of that result, in any other complex technological system such as ours, there is a very important principle that you can achieve high speeds only in sustainable systems. Siemens could not increase the speed. It took them 50 years, not 3, 5, 10 years, 50 years to get at 500 kilometers per hour. In 2015, we received land in Marina Gorka, and 2 years later, our first car went on the track, started moving on the track. I have that model in my office. I'm talking from my... And that car already traveled hundreds of thousands of kilometers. It visited different countries. It took us 2 years to launch the first U-Pod. So we realized that we can speed it up. We can work on the technology, but what about the organizational component, which is way more important? And sometimes you can rush things, and then you get tragedy at the end. So yes, you can speed up by working on the technology and scaling, and not just rushing the technology into the market. So you need to lay the foundation first. And this, what we did. We did that critical milestone. It's even more important than the technology itself, laying the foundation, the school, the know-how. And if you make a mistake, you will have no room and time to correct that mistake. When the engineers of Siemens made a mistake, they weren't able to rectify it later because it was part of the technology. And to rectify that mistake, they had to go back 50 years and redo the whole technology, to basically start from scratch. So the situation that we're in right now, the crisis of the situation, or the critical point here, is that we can lose the team that we spent dozens of years to build, because I started building my team of engineers even before crowd investing. I'm talking about my scientific papers, monographs. I'm talking about my whole experience as an engineer. So we decided to look for options, and the only option for us was to address our investors, because our investors are not only just investors, they are also co-owners of that technology. It is their technology, it is their engineering team, it is their engineering school, not just mine. Although it is called Unitsky's Engineering School, it is also the building I'm in right now, the 9-story building, 12,000 square meters. It is their car that is sitting in my office. It is their Eco-Techno Park and Sky Transport in United Arab Emirates. And in my speech, I explained that it is critical for us to scale up, to go to the market, and for our investors to start receiving remuneration. And people heard me. And the platform, GTI, you know, the platforms that existed before, there were several platforms before, fundraising platform, they were not part of GTI. They were privately owned platforms with their own interests, but they're not part of the GTI platform, except RSW Systems. And of course, those platforms had their own interest, had their own focus, and they lost focus and concentration on our project. So what RSW Systems and Micron Global are going to do, they will be doing it as part of the GTI. It is part of the family of GTI and not like an independent structure. So with correct funding and correct mechanism, risks will be reduced to zero, because we've now overcome the most difficult milestone in our life cycle. And yeah, thanks to RSW Systems too, that is part of GTI, that has been in existence for what, 11 years now? I think I've covered this point enough, right, Maxim? Yeah, I tried to do it in simple terms without going into much technical detail and terminology. Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Unitsky. I wanted to add up here that for many investors, especially from Asian countries, it is not known that RSW Systems is the platform from which GTI started its crowd investing process, and it is under direct control of the GTI Group of companies. It is basically an online platform through which the GTI pre-IPO shares are sold. That's how it has been for the last 11 years, and then that's how it is now. And as Dr. Unitsky also mentioned, Micron Global platform that will be launched in 21 days, that platform is a marketing service platform that is part of the GTI group of companies as well. GTI will be providing marketing services for promotion of the technology for the purpose of crowd investing, and it is also under full control of GTI. Another important thing here, to make sure that all our potential Micron Global clients and investors in future through that platform would understand, the money that is going to be paid by Micron Global clients will directly go to the financial accounts of GTI, and Micron Global will receive its marketing fee for the provision of marketing services. it is a part of the GTI group of companies, and their main interest is not making money from investing, but to help implement the technology, go to the market, receive dividends or remuneration, a better term, and then everyone's happy. And I also want to earn remuneration. I'm the majority investor. I want to earn not from the process of fundraising, but from the ultimate result. Because if I start earning from the investment process itself, not all of the money will reach the technology. Imagine we scale up, we build like millions of kilometers of tracks in 10, 20 years. The entire road market is like trillions of dollars, and we have a share in that market. How much do you think it is? It's way more than a fundraising platform earns from fundraising. So GTI aims not at the current benefit or profits like the financial pyramids do. They use the money they raised to pay their agents, and then they fold and say goodbye. Well, Dr. Unitsky, I wanted to focus right now on one more thing, that you, as engineers, underlined a very important point. Scaling that we are going towards is impossible without sustainability, and sustainability cannot appear on its own. And here I also wanted to add for myself that those managerial changes that you mentioned as an engineer, for us it is critically important right now to understand that the current decisions that were made, they follow the logic of the GTI strategy. And everything is going according to plan. Yes, there are some shifts in the context, but nevertheless we follow the original plan. And over the last couple of weeks, we saw one very important fact. The measures that were offered for funding optimization worked and are working. We saw multifold increase in investment activity thanks to you, dear investors and partners. Again, thank you very much. You have our gratitude. It also shows that the market overall understands the nature of what's happening as a temporary measure. At the same time, dear investors, I want to point out another very crucial thing. The safety net that is being developed right now, it's not a rainy day fund. It's not a money that will be taken out of the working capital. No, it's operational money that will be used to maintain and expand the engineering activity. Second of all, it will help us launch or speed up the project activities for our commercial projects. And third, it will help us move to the next stage of implementation strategy. I'm talking about preparation for the IPO that we're all waiting for. And right now, we've started that implementation of every stage, step by step or stage by stage, as they say. Within the preparation of this process, we are launching the process of uniting Emirates company, Usky and Uscovery companies into one entity. Dr. Unitsky, could you please tell us more about this merger of two companies in the United Arab Emirates? Well, honestly, it's not about those two companies only, but on their example, we can show our overall approach that we're implementing right now. In the United Arab Emirates, historically, we have a situation where different functions were separated across different legal entities. And it wasn't done by chance. Work overseas usually is linked to quite a lot of different risks and difficulties. And when the parent company, GTI, is an offshore area, this alone already prevents us from creating legal entities, opening bank accounts, etc. transferring of money for the operation of different bureaus. It creates quite a lot of difficulties. So we had to look for ways of coming out of this situation to work on the technological part. And Unitsky Transport right now is like an operator for us, a demonstration center. We had to build it, and we built it. And without that company, we wouldn't be able to acquire land, because you cannot have land without the legal entity, or you can't open a bank account, and we did it. Because this company was not in offshore, it was in the United Arab Emirates. And Unitsky was the operator, and Discovery is purely marketing, and like communication, liaison office. So it's marketing and liaison office for us. And clients interact with one company, and then they go to the next company to see how the technology operates, worked. And of course, it kind of makes working with clients more difficult at this stage of development. It extends the time. It also complicates the process of paying out salaries, because every company has its own accountant, and once we merge them, we will have one accountant. For now, we have two directors, and we'll have just one director after the merger. So it's optimization. It's a merger between implementation and demonstration. So it was necessary back in the day, at the early stage, but now when we're scaling up, we finally can merge into one company, because both companies are still part of the GTI family, and they're not standalone entities. And now we are transitioning to the next phase. And the logic is different in the next stage. We don't need two separate entities. And now we need to understand the client's journey, or partner's investor's journey in it. We need to make it straightforward, transparent, and understandable, from first contact with the technology to demonstration to the project implementation, commercialization of the project. This is why we decided to merge those entities, two companies, into one legal entity, which will help us facilitate managerial structure, increase operation transparency, reduce costs, and most importantly, make the group of companies more understandable, clear to external partners and market participants in the future. It's not just a one-off solution decision. We are applying this approach to all GTI companies. It's part of the more extensive work on bringing the corporate architecture to a new stage, to a stage of scaling and preparation for the next large-scale stage of development. And it is these steps that should be made in silence, without huge announcements. And it helps us move the project from demonstration to sustainable replicability of the business. And I'm talking about sector-shaping business here. Yes, Dr. Unitsky, I would like to underline here and focus on the fact, dear colleagues, that what is happening right now at this stage, it is all outlined in the GTI strategy document. The company is taking consecutive, proven steps, and all of those processes are happening at the same time, in parallel. Currently, we're moving to a more flexible investment participation model. We're talking about the creation already now of a specialized structures tailored to specific commercial projects, targeted commercial projects. And as I said, Dr. Unitsky, it will help us attract big capital without waiting subsidies from the government. We can now make offers to states and partners ready financial solutions. It also allows the company to launch design works faster and projects the money from which will go directly to the engineering company, and that money becomes revenue, and revenue becomes profits to be shared with investors into GTI. It is this logic that is included in the strategy that allows us right now to talk about the acceleration in achieving the key goals of our projects, i.e. scaling, capitalization, and starting regularly payouts. And the way I see it, this is what's happening right now. This current stage is not just like a tension point or turbulence point. It's a tuning point, configuration point, after which you have only movement forward, fast and manageable. And in this regard, Dr. Unitsky, I simply have to ask you the following question. Not as to an engineer, but to a person who saw the implementation of dozens of infrastructural projects at different stages. So if we take a broader look at the project, do I understand correctly that the current managerial decisions are aimed not just to surviving the difficult period, but to go through the entire journey from concept to implementation? In your opinion, what key factors can speed up the implementation of targeted commercial projects without losing reliability, following the logic in the GTI strategical document? Well, I understand your question. Of course, I can give you the outline in broad strokes, but probably I should give you an example of a specific project, which after restructuring of the group of companies and receiving the safety net so that the company would have enough money to cover operational costs, we can go to the markets without asking anyone's permission and start implementing huge infrastructural projects without having to convince states and governments for 10, 20 years. We can start implementing those projects on our own. And one of such projects that we will start implementing in the near future, I'm not going to give you details, I'm not even going to tell you the country, I'm just going to give you the numbers, because we have quite a lot of enemies and adversaries and people who engage in unfair competition. I will just give you in broad strokes the outline of the project. Imagine that the group of companies right now, after organizing its structure, has enough money for the first stages of work, pre-design and feasibility study, just for that part. And after doing that, we can announce that we're implementing an infrastructural project with the length of around 1,000 kilometers, track of 1,000 kilometers, and $12 million worth, without asking anyone's permission. We have the competence to do, $10 billion, sorry, $10 billion cost, which means at least $1 billion spent on design work, which is our competence, obtaining of licenses for the project, then startup and commissioning, special work, etc. It's all part of our competences. It's going to be our revenue. This is the revenue part. And now imagine the costs of GTI here will be $120 million, which leaves $700 million as remuneration for investors. This money is not going to be wasted and used on operational costs, because we already have money for the operational costs. We don't have to spend on operations. We already have the safety net. We're not talking about just $1,000 track, 1,000-kilometer track only. We're talking about a infrastructural logistical corridor, a high-speed track, 500 kilometers. We have urban track, up to 150 kilometers. And we have a linear city with residential houses, with gardens on the rooftop and gardens around the houses. I'm talking about orchards and kitchen gardens. We have power supply lines. We have organic farming, including Utera brand. It's the fertility elixir that investors didn't invest directly. And other technologies that investors did not invest into, however, they will benefit from that as well, because it is now part of that corridor, infrastructural logistical corridor, where GTI will own 20%, around 20%. So out of everything that will be implemented within that corridor, infrastructural logistical corridor, everything, including things that investors didn't invest, like high-speed transportation. Remember, high-speed transportation has only 1% of investors' money, yet they will still enjoy 20% of revenues from the implementation of that project. Investors did not invest in Utera. I invested in Utera, but Utera will also be among the projects that investors will benefit from, because Utera will be part of the corridor, and the foundation of that corridor is string transportation. So once we test the pilot this project in one country, I can do it in any other country. Vietnam, for example. Most of our investments in the previous period came from Vietnam. Vietnam is our main investor. And 15 years ago, I met with the Prime Minister of Vietnam, and I suggested Hanoi Ho Chi Minh project back then. 15 years passed, we offered that project again. It's very difficult to convince the government to allocate that money in the budget. And now they moved in a different direction. They want to build high-speed train that will be $50 billion more expensive than what we offered. But imagine now we have the experience and we tell them, we would like to implement this project. We will create the necessary infrastructure by pooling together all those competencies, where it will be shareholding and not crowd investing. And investors will be directly buying shares in the company, which will be implementing the project. And all of the investors will also be, all the previous investors will also be there, because without the string technology, this project wouldn't be possible. And we won't have to ask anyone's permission, the president's permission or government's permission, and we just start works. And when the management of the country, administration of the country sees that the project has been launched and the project is real, and they can save $50 billion, of course they will join in. State level, regional level, big investors, investment funds. And we've just invested in the initial stage of the project. We'll have access to huge investments. And we'll implement the project. It's a different form of implementation. Let's take China, the biggest economy in the world. Xi Jinping, the chairperson of the party, announced a strategic project. It's a national idea. One belt, one way. It's the former Silk Way. It was announced in 2014. Has it been implemented? Not yet. It was announced by the head of the state, because you cannot implement such things with old approaches. Yet our approach can help do that. The approach that we're using in scaling up the project, we can do it. And it won't take us 10, 12 years, but way more. Less, of course. Dr. Unitsky, do I understand correctly that right, in the technology scaling approach, you will probably create corporations in different regions, right? Well, not just corporations. There are millions of corporations out there. I'm talking about infrastructural development corporations for the development of a whole country or region. This is a different level of corporation, where you need all the sector competencies that we have. There will be a corridor built. I'm talking about roads, high-speed tracks, urban cargo, passenger. It's linear cities, the urbanism development. We're talking about available houses, affordable houses, eco-houses, where close by you have work jobs quite there. Because you need doctors, you need plumbers, you need teachers, right? It's thousands of jobs. You need hospitals and kindergartens. You will need farmers there for growing organic food. We're creating jobs. We are solving demographic problems because people are asking themselves, why give birth to children if you don't have a house, you don't have a stable job? Imagine you have it. It will also help address demographic problems for those countries. The problems of eco-structural safety, food safety, transportation safety, problems of and many other problems too. This is something that the state itself cannot do. And through that project, you address those problems automatically. Like they started building railroads without asking anyone's permission, and they changed the world. Cities appeared in places where where there was nothing, where there was desert. Simply, it was companies that started building railroads, and we're going to do the same, but a new stage of development. It wasn't not like in early 19th century, but early 21st century, with a different technology that is leaps and bounds ahead of the entire world. In your opinion, what is the time frame when you can start implementing that to scale up the technology at that level in certain regions? When do you think it's possible? Well, we already started that process. We're now talking about the investment part of it. It's too early to announce, but we have the understanding how to do that. So we're already on that track. And I'm sure that spring this year, we will announce the creation of such a structure for the implementation of this huge infrastructural logistical projects. We will know what country it is, what region it is. I think spring this year is when we can do that. And when we have this safety net, thanks to our investors, the co-owners of the technology, because you need to spend like 20 years convincing the state for them to allocate like 20 million or $1 million. And we did it in just one day because investors understood what kind of stage of development we are at. Even if no one is in our way, we can easily and quickly implement such a project. Well, if they are in our way, probably will take us 5 years instead of 1 year. In 14 years of the starting of the One Belt, One Way, they didn't do anything. And they just wanted to build a road. And in our case, it's not just a road, it's a whole complex. Dr. Unitsky, do I understand correctly that without the funding optimization plan, if we didn't give the opportunity to our investors to support the technology at a very good discount, we wouldn't be able to move to that stage that you're talking about? Well, what I want to say is this funding optimization plan that we've just put in motion allows now the technology to go to the scaling stage on a regular basis, not just, but also to overcome any critical stage. You understand? We're working in a sector where if you have to put something on hold, you die. Imagine a human being comes for food and you tell them, well, we don't have food. Come in a month. They come in a month and they're dead. And that's it. And the same is here. Funding is crucial and funding should be continuous, especially at a stage when costs have increased and not reduced, and increased because we are now implementing processes that were simply necessary. And if we do not have funding, everything dies. There is no way out. There is no alternative here. As I said, out of 100 technological companies, only one company survives that stage, and we survived, but we had the risk of not surviving. So I'm very helpful to all of our investors who heard the call, understood, and did incredible things. And I would like to thank you all very, very much from the bottom of my heart. We helped ourselves here because you saved your investments by doing it. Moreover, you increased your potential remuneration because you increased your investment portfolio. And I'm an engineer, but I understand finance, I understand economy, I understand investments too. And when you walk down the desert and you are dying of thirst, and someone on a camel going by tells you, I have water, pay me $1,000 for a bottle of water. And you are telling them, it's too expensive, $1,000 for a bottle of water. And he says, no, it's the right price. And that person doesn't buy the water and they die. So don't look at the discounts. And that for some people discounts were too high, as they say. But think why those discounts were offered. And what we sold is probably a 1%. And that 1% does not really affect your payout or remuneration. But it is enough to survive. It is enough to save that person dying from thirst. And that percent is not your shares being sold. That percent, it was the shares sold that had already been issued in the past. It's not a new issue of pre-IPO shares. Those pre-IPO shares have already been issued before. The number of issued shares did not increase. It's just those shares were originally intended for sale. So there is no dilution of shares here. I'd say the value of those shares increased because it helped the company get out of crisis. It helped the company to scale up, and the revenues will grow, which means the price of the shares will grow. Nobody lost here anything. It's a win-win for everyone. Those who were able to purchase more pre-IPO shares increased their investment portfolio, and it was also a good win for those who did not increase their investment portfolio, but they had shares purchased before, and they will benefit from the scale up because it will increase the value of their shares in the future. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Unitsky. We've touched upon fundamental things. We've touched upon very important aspects of this stage of development of the entire group of companies, GTI, and the scaling of the technology of string transportation. What I wanted to emphasize, dear partners and colleagues, and Dr. Unitsky here, is that indeed, the development of the entire technology, I'm talking about the first stage, which is the shaping, technological shaping of it. We're past it now. Ahead of us, we have the second stage, which is the commercial shaping formation. And now we're at a crossroads. Or in that, not crossroads, in that period better. And as Dr. Unitsky said, as I said on numerous occasions, dear investors, colleagues and partners, right now we play a crucial role in it. because further scaling up will be possible only thanks to our efforts. And the investment opportunities that we have right now give us the opportunity to increase our own investment portfolio, support the technology at this very crucial stage, but most importantly, we need to understand that this is a temporary measure. I'd say a temporary offer available. And these investment proposals over time will be reduced. The discounts will go down gradually. Of course, it won't happen overnight, but gradually the discounts will go down. But we still have 3 weeks to make the best use of that offer and create ourselves this instrument that will implement everything that Dr. Unitsky mentioned right now. And in conclusion of our meeting, I would like to make it clear several important points. First, we have a mature engineering system. We have confirmed interest from the market in it and clear development strategy. Second, all the managerial decisions is about making sure the transition is smooth. It is a complex but a natural stage for any infrastructural project, because our project is not just infrastructural project, it's a sector-shaping project. Third, the safety net, the financial reserve fund that we are creating right now, and we are working on creating right now. This financial reserve fund is not like a piggy bank for the rainy day. It's an active working capital that is used to speed up design work, to develop the entire engineering team, and prepare for the next stage in the development strategy. Fourth, dear colleagues, we have started practical restructuring of the group of companies and investment infrastructure. Those changes aim at increasing transparency, manageability, and readiness of the project to work with big capital and markets. And fifth, all current measures that are being implemented in this way, without impairing the interest of the investors who already are in the project, all of it is outlined in the GTI strategy document. And most importantly, friends, we knowingly, currently, avoid loud promises and statements, and we're just giving simple answers to complex questions. We are confident that trust is formed based not on loud statements and declarations, but on consistent actions, on clear explanation of the logic of the decisions that have been made. We fully realize that currently not all investors, not all supporters of the string transportation technology agree with the decisions made by the company. It is quite normal. However, in this long-term, complex project that we are all part of, it is impossible to have 100% consensus at every stage. It is normal, it is standard. Our task right now is not to convince everyone, but consecutively implement the strategy and be responsible for the decisions implemented. Well, to summarize, all the key points that have been stated today point to that. And Maxim, I wanted also to add here that we're not changing goals and we're not making our path easy, as some people think. What we're doing is we're bringing this technological system to a state where they can sustainably scale up. Well, to use a metaphor, we were at the stage of childhood. You know, when you are a child, you fall, you get bruises, you even break your bones, but you learn lessons from that. When you learn to ride a bike, you fall, you get scratches, you get bruises, but you learn to ride a bike and you never fall later. And then you become an adult, and adults behave differently. And now we are transitioning to the adulthood. And for engineers, it is important to ensure the reproducibility repeatability of the result. Without it, you cannot implement a technology. Siemens, with 300,000 employees, invested 6.5 billion euros, including governmental funds, weren't able to scale up the project. They just implemented one project and shut it down. And that's it, end of the story. Reproducibility of the result is very important. Ford created cars in a shed and sold them for $5,000. And then they created a whole sector, built plants. They scaled up. They started selling millions of cars. And that's where the business received success, and not when he created his first cars in a shed. And we are past that stage, conception stage. And now we're building a system where every next step will be based not on gut feeling, intuition, because projects of such scale cannot be founded on intuition alone or expectations. It relies on maturity, on adulthood, adult technology, mature technology, sector-shaping technology, which any city needs, any region needs, any country, all continents and the entire planet needs. This is the scale of our technology. And this is important. This is the foundation for moving forward for our project. And it is such approaches eventually change the entire sector, the entire industry. Because horse-driven carriages were replaced by steam engines. Then cars appeared. Then aviation came into being. And if we draw parallels here, make comparisons, brothers Wright did not pass the technological stage. They just created a first airplane. They flew it. They showed the technology exists. It's viable and it's sector shaping. That did not move forward. They didn't scale it up. A different person did it. Boeing did it. He did it. So the aviation sector was created by him and not by brothers Wright. They did not go through the stage that we've went through, thanks to you, thanks to your timely help to us and to yourselves and to the entire technology, for us to become adult and for us to go to the market as a company in our prime, when we can start talking about other projects, huge scale project. And we know whom to rely on. It's you, our investors. We have a total of almost 500,000 people, and then we'll have millions. That's a huge force. And we won't have to need money for the entire project, but just for the initial stages of it. And then governments, investment funds will join in. I already mentioned that. So this is what we need to understand, the stages that we're going through. And we're continuing doing that work in a professional, competent manner, always remembering why we're doing it, what for. And I'm trying to deliver that message to you as well, as an engineer, as a designer, as an organizer, as a manager, as an economist, as a person who understands finance and many other things. And I'm giving you arguments from different sectors, but overall, it's a comprehensive approach that will allow us to go to the scaling stage. And this work took not just 10 years. I started that work probably 50, 60 years ago, back when I was a student. This is just the final stage of that long-term work, of that journey. And at the last 10 years, our investors joined in, but they didn't join in from scratch. They joined in when the technology was ready, but had no demonstration, no prototype, right? But without prototype, without certification, you cannot go to the market. But the concept was already developed and ready. And thanks to our investors, we went through that stage. And now we're at a scaling stage. So let's rely on our own strengths, on ourselves, and not wait for someone to help us. They won't help us. Probably in 50 years, they might help us. Dr. Unitsky, in the context of what you've just said, thanks to our entire crowd investing community, and first of all, thanks to you as a person whom all our investors trust, we were able to do that. We went through the first stage of funding optimization of the GTI Group of companies. So, which started late January and will go through most of February. It is still going on, this funding optimization process. And it is my deep belief that all of the people present here today, all of the people who will join our meeting next Sunday, will always also actively participate in it. And by joint efforts, we will be able to give the company that foundation and at the same time give that financial springboard for future scaling, which already started. And today you outlined those crucial points, things that are already being done. And I would like to focus, dear friends, that for better understanding, that Dr. Unitsky today said that in essence the GTI Group of companies, in terms of the commercialization of the projects, planned this year to go to start a different format of operations. As Dr. Unitsky said, we're talking about projects for hundreds of thousands of kilometers of tracks in different countries of the world, where we'll have the correct financial legal infrastructure for those projects to be implemented. And we will be holding at least 20% stake in those projects. Do I understand correctly, Dr. Unitsky? In the technological part of it, yes, exactly. In the technological part of it, at least 20% stake. Because other investors will have to join and they will also claim part of the stake, right? Because if we sell half of the shares and then half of it will be for the technology, then instead of 20%, it will be 10% stake. But it will still be present anyways across all technological projects of the corporation. Because investors will not invest if they don't get a share, a stake in the project, right? So they have to get a stake. However, our investors will be always co-owners of the technology. And the first part of any project is the technological part. And because we will be the one doing the design work, we will not be subcontracting someone else that will do that work 10 times higher the price and not do it at all. We will be responsible and doing the technological part, and 100% of the technology is owned by our investors. And by having a stake in the authorized capital, investors will also be sharing in the revenues, in the profits of the entire project, and not just project consisting of one track. We're talking about communication lines, internet, tracks themselves, organic farming. This is what I've been talking about. Even there, where investors did not invest, because nobody invested in internet there or organic farming. Yet they will be participating in the profits or sharing in the profits of that project. And if we successfully test that mechanism, we can then apply it to any other country and region, because we'll have already competencies and nobody will object, because it's business. It will be a win-win for everyone. But when we come and say and start asking for money or asking for land or help us certified or give us this, give us that, and the host will be looking at us and says, well, we have problems enough without you. We're already planning like a high-speed railroad. We're planning for a cable road. We don't have money for you. This is a completely different approach to scaling at the industrial level, when the maturity stage of the technology and the organizational structure is past. Because by developing the technology, we also developed managerial organizational competencies by learning how to conduct negotiations and meetings, how to get the help of the assistance of governors, mayors, governments. We learned how to propose correctly, to be heard, because it was all lessons learned and not just us building test tracks and that's it. Companies come in, they don't have that, and then disappeared. 99% of companies never went through that stage, and we did because we have enough maturity. We know what stage we're at. I did repeat on a number of occasions the same things from different angles, because I wanted to show it to you that we're different from what we were 2 weeks ago, for example. And this investors' understanding and support improved drastically everything for us and showed that we were ready and we have someone to rely on. I'm talking about our army of investors from 200 countries. This is our strength. This is our foundation. I'm talking about the investment financial part, but there is also the technological part component to it. I'm talking about the GTI Group of companies. We have 2 legs to stand on, not just one. It's a more stable position compared to standing on just one leg. Investments without technology and technology without investments. Well, you can't walk too far on crutches, all right? Of course, I'm speaking metaphorically here. I'm not intending to offend anyone here. This is my way of explaining complex things in simple terms. You do it through metaphors and analogies, and you need to be able to do it correctly. And not everyone understands metaphors correctly. Well, like I might deviate here to make you understand what kind of a difficult sector we're in. Late 19th century. Many people dream about planes, aviation, and you have Zeppelins, for example, and Montgolfiers. And Lord Kelvin, who was a member of the Academy back then, Academy of Science of London, a very smart person. You have the Kelvin degree named after him, said this. He said that an object heavier than air cannot fly, and he buried aviation by this statement. Why? Because when he said this, he imagined himself a brick that fell probably on his foot, or an apple that fell on his head, like in Newton's case. And he came to the conclusion that an object heavier than air cannot fly. But he made a very, very big mistake. He didn't see another object that can fly and that is heavier than air. He just had to look outside at a pigeon, at a sparrow, any other bird that is heavier than air yet flies. So you need to be very careful with your metaphors, because you might make a mistake. And he almost put a tombstone on the aviation. But thankfully, brothers Wright didn't hear Kelvin, and they came up with a plane, and they started the whole sector, aviation. We need to be aware of that, and we know how to go through those stages, not minding what others are saying, who don't understand why we're doing it and what we're doing it. We should ignore them. This is very important, not to be mindful of them. Dr. Unitsky, I would like to sincerely thank you for explaining very important things in very simple terms, some very complex things in simple terms, and you're always able to deliver that information metaphorically and make it clear to most of our investors. And I wanted also to say thanks for finding time in your tight schedule. I know right now you are still at your workplace, although it's already 7:30 p.m. The working hours are well over, and you are still here talking with us. Then, Dr. Unitsky, I would like to sincerely thank you and assure you on behalf of the entire crowd investing community that our active work, help, and funding of the technology will continue not only at the same level, but will continuously grow, especially take into account that ahead of us we have quite a lot of marketing activities planned linked to the launch of the Micron Global Marketing Platform. And currently we're using the platform that we have at our disposal, the RSW Systems platform, the platform that has been operating for 11 years now. So thank you very much, Dr. Unitsky. I would like to wish you lots of health, strength, and energy. You have it, I know. I want you to preserve that flame in your heart, that passion towards humanity, towards preserving, the cause of preserving life on the planet Earth. And with our help, that flame will become bigger and bigger and will spread across the entire planet. You can see the chat. It's literally flooded with words of support. It's being torn apart. Today we had 2,100 people attending live, which is just a small share of people who believe in you, who support you, and who are sure of our common success. Thank you very much, Dr. Unitsky. We will definitely continue this tradition of updating our investors about the results. It can be either interviews like that or video recordings, addresses. We will continue doing that during the funding optimization process. Thank you very much, Dr. Unitsky. And thank you for your kind words. I would like to thank all of our investors from the bottom of my heart. I am taking my hat off to you. I would like to add to what Maxim Issyp said. We've gradually crossed, or unnoticeably crossed, a very important frontier, threshold. So some people think that we're continuing funding the technology, but we've moved to a more important stage. You are now funding the business, not the technology. Yes, scaling is business. We've moved from technology to business. And we're going to use those investments to create the biggest business in the human history. We've crossed that threshold, that Rubicon. Now we are helping the creation of a biggest business in the human history. I'm sure we will pass that, and then we'll start to large scaling, and then we won't need private investing anymore. Then the states, banks, investment funds will join in. So that transition has been crossed, that boundary has been crossed without anyone noticing it. And the crowdfunding will not be necessary for the support the technology, it will be necessary to support earmarked projects, separate projects. And yes, we will be implementing separate individual projects, and we will open the doors to investors, especially if those projects will be implemented in your country. You will be able to support those projects. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Unitsky. I'm looking forward to seeing you at our future meetings, interviews, and I would like to wish you a good rest of the evening and productive tomorrow working day. Thank you very much. No, thank you very much to you. Well, dear colleagues, in conclusion, I would like to make a couple of technical announcements. Let me remind you that we're meeting at 3 p.m. Central European Time on Sunday. It's 5 p.m. Moscow time, and then you have to check your own time zones. We're going to share some important updates about our activities. And then we'll be making all the announcements related to the launch of the Micron Global. This is going to be a very important meeting, and I'm inviting you to that meeting. Please find time for it. And also, I wanted to remind you that until the end of the promotional offer, our referral program on RSW system will not be changed. I repeat, the referral program will persist until the end of the promotion. So all the referral payments will stay unchanged. So you can make the best use of the referral system, of the partner program. So right now, we are at a very important stage of the development of our technology. As Dr. Unitsky said, we are not raising funds for the technology. We are raising funds for the business right now. We are raising funds to help the company scale up and get implemented. So we can now say with all assurance that we've moved from the stage of technological development to commercialization. And all the investments that are coming to the GTI Group of companies are directed at business scaling. And this is the foundation, dear friends, the foundation of our course that we will be following throughout year 2026 and in all subsequent years. And all the investors who will be joining the technology from now on will see that they will not have to wait for the payout day, for the returns, as long as we had to wait. The payout day for them will come way, way sooner compared to us who invested 5, 8, 10 years ago, or even 3 years ago. So, dear friends, we've made a huge breakthrough in literally 6 days, the last days of January, despite the fact that the website was down for almost an entire day. We've achieved our interim milestone. More will be achieved in the future. We still have 3 weeks, full weeks to act upon. And together we will show an astounding result. We can do it, dear friends. We can. Looking forward to seeing you at our next meeting on Sunday, the 8th of February. Have a nice rest of the evening. Have productive end of the week. I'm sure you will make best use of it. Looking forward to seeing you. Bye-bye.
Lights begin. The code runs clean. Machines awake, but nothing's seen. A measured breath, a silent cue. system speaks, we understand we can do it. That's enough. We can do it. Hard and rough. We can do it. Under rule. We can do it. Keep it cool. The glass reflects, the wires hum, a sterile faith in what's to come. Hands aligned, no need to feel. Control becomes the new idea. Command received, delay, decline. We leave no trace, we stay confined. We can do it. We comply. We can do it. We don't try. We can do it. In the grave. We can do it. Night and day. Motion pure, no cause, no sin. Progress carved in discipline. Silence builds, the world resets. We do what the system expects. We can do it.